Disclaimer. This podcast is AI-powered and all data and sources are from podwires.com. They have been fact-checked and vetted by a human editor.
From the Podwires newsroom at podwires.com.
Okay, so we've got a stack of articles here all about podcasting. And, everyone's talking about it, right? Is it the future? It's going bust. Well, we're going to do a deep dive today and figure out what's really going on.
Yeah, it's way more interesting than just boom or bust.
Yeah.
There are some big changes happening under the surface.
Okay, so let's jump right in with Libsyn. They're one of those like OG podcasting platforms. They've been around forever. But they just brought in Brendan Monahan as their CEO. And that's not just like your typical executive shuffle.
Oh, no, this is a big deal for sure. I mean, Monahan's the guy who built Megaphone. Remember them? Spotify bought them a few years back for a cool $235 million. And then he went on to lead Spotify's global podcast, expansion. So this isn't just about experience. This is about bringing in someone who knows how to grow, someone who knows how to compete in this crazy market.
Yeah, it's almost like Libsyn is sending a message. Like, hey, Spotify, we're not just going to sit here and be the reliable old platform. We're here to play.
Absolutely. And it'll be really interesting to see how this plays out. Libsyn has always been the place for independent creators. So will this new focus on growth, will that change things for them? Will they start catering more to the big networks and the big names?
Right. Like, is the indie bookstore suddenly trying to become Amazon? Speaking of big players, though, Audioboom, they just released their financial report for this past quarter.
Wow, they are celebrating over there.
Yeah, 34% revenue growth.
Yeah.
$1 million in adjusted EBITDA. They are on track to blow past their own profit projections for the year. It's pretty impressive stuff.
It sounds like their secret weapon is this thing called Showcase, which is their advertising platform. But it's not just like your typical, ad reads, right?
No, it's way more sophisticated than that. It's less about interrupting the show with an ad and more about weaving brands into the content in a way that makes sense. So for example, let's say you have a history podcast that's really popular. Showcase could connect you with a documentary streaming service for a whole campaign, not just an ad for mattresses or something.
Yeah.
So it's about finding sponsors that actually fit with the show. So it feels less like a commercial break and more like a natural extension of what you're already listening to.
Exactly. And because it's all data-driven, advertisers are getting better insights into who's listening and how well their campaigns are actually performing. And that is huge. That's what's attracting these big brands because they want results.
And it kind of proves that podcast advertising is here to stay, right? It's not just some passing fad.
Yeah.
Especially when you consider what's happening with traditional media. Didn't we see something about how radio is actually beating out digital in terms of ROI?
You're talking about that Nielsen study. It's really interesting. For a long time, everyone just assumed that digital advertising was the holy grail. But this study shows that good old-fashioned AM/FM radio, which includes broadcast podcasts, by the way, can actually deliver a much better return on investment.
Which makes sense when you think about it. People driving to work at the gym, they're listening to the radio. And increasingly, that includes podcasts. It's a captive audience.
Yeah, and let's be honest, sometimes you just get tired of those hyper-targeted online ads. Sometimes a well-placed audio ad in a context you're already enjoying, it can be way more impactful.
It's like the difference between getting a flyer shoved in your face versus overhearing a recommendation from a friend. But it's not all about, spreadsheets and ad revenue. We're also seeing some really interesting changes happening on the creative side of podcasting, too. We were talking about how there are all these creative changes happening in the podcasting world too.
Yeah, it's not even just about making a show anymore. You got to be a business person.
No.
Look at Ira Glass, right? The voice of This American Life. He just made this deal with National Public Media to handle all his ad sales.
Oh, wow. So instead of going through a network or a platform, he's just cutting out the middleman.
Exactly. And he's using his own audience and his own creative control to get a better deal. And he's not the only one. A lot of big podcasters are starting to do this, are realizing they can make more money and have more control this way.
Yeah, it makes sense. They're the ones with the direct connection to the listeners. Yeah. They know what will actually work. Instead of just having some, random generic ad, it's the podcasters you love are choosing the ads themselves.
Right. And it's better for everyone. Podcasters get more money. Listeners get a better experience. And it all goes back to what we were talking about with Audioboom and that Showcase thing. It's all about moving away from those baked-in ads and moving towards ads that can be updated, in real time.
Oh, so instead of hearing that same ad for meal kits every single episode, You might hear about a cool event at a local bookstore one week, and then like a new documentary the next week.
Exactly. It just feels more natural, you know? And advertisers love it too because it means they're reaching the right people.
Right place, right time.
Exactly. But there's another group we can't forget about here who I think are going to be really important to all of this. Gen Z.
Oh, yeah. Spotify said that Gen Z is actually their fastest growing group of listeners. I was kind of surprised by that.
Yeah, it's easy to forget about them because they have so many other things they could be listening to. But they love audio. They just consume it in a different way.
They're not just like passively listening while they do the dishes, right?
No way. They want video. They want interactive stuff. Live events. They want to be a part of it.
Which makes sense. I mean, they've grown up with that second screen experience. Like everything is on demand and interactive.
Exactly. It's not just about consuming content. It's about being part of a community.
Like those watch parties.
Yes.
Or like live streaming where you can chat with the creator in real time.
And now they're bringing that same energy to podcasting. It's really pushing the boundaries of what audio can be.
It's not just an American thing either. This whole podcast revolution is global.
For sure. In fact, remember that UK political podcast we were talking about, The Rest is Politics?
Yeah.
Well, they did something pretty amazing.
What's that?
They sold out the O2 Arena in London.
No way.
Yeah, 13,000 seats for a podcast. That's more than some bands can even fill.
And it's a podcast about politics.
I know, right? It just goes to show you the power of audio. To like really connect with people on a deeper level.
Yeah, it's like these podcasters aren't just talking heads, you know? They're like your friends.
Right, you're inviting them into your ears every week.
And in a world where it feels like everything is so fragmented and divided, I think people are just really craving that sense of community, you know, that shared experience. And I think just a few years ago, people were like, what even is a podcast? It really is amazing when you think about how far podcasting has come.
Right, like from those early days where you're trying to explain to your friends, like, no, it's like radio, but on your computer.
Exactly. And now look at it. Thousands of people packing into arenas to hear these podcasts live.
It's like, yeah, it shows you the power of this thing, you know? Like, it's not just about information, it's about that connection.
Yeah, like that feeling of going to a concert, but it's for your ears, you know?
Totally. And it's not just about music anymore. We're talking about all these different kinds of stories and ideas and perspectives.
Right, like true crime is huge comedy fiction. Even history podcasts are blowing up.
It's like this whole world of storytelling that's opened up.
And the crazy thing is you don't need $1 million to do it.
Right. You don't need a Hollywood studio or a big publisher. You just need a good idea, a microphone, and something to say.
And the talent that's being drawn to podcasting now, too.
Oh, yeah.
It's incredible.
Like A-list actors and writers.
Pulitzer Prize winners, professors.
Everyone's realizing, like, hey, audio is where it's at.
Because it's so intimate, right? Like, you can really connect with the audience in a way that you just can't through a screen.
100%. It's just you and the listener, and that's it.
So, okay, we've covered a lot of ground here today. We talked about how those like big companies like Libsyn are making their moves, Audio Boon and those super targeted ads. We talked about podcasters becoming their own like media moguls, Gen Z shaking things up, and this whole global audio revolution.
It's a lot.
It really feels like podcasting is at this like crossroads.
It does, doesn't it?
Like, is it going to like completely upend the entire media landscape? Or will it just kind of get absorbed into, you know, the way things are?
Are we going to see even more independent podcasts selling out stadiums?
Right. Or are the big companies going to come in and like change everything?
Who knows?
I don't think anyone has a crystal ball for this stuff. But no matter what happens,
it's going to be fun to watch.
It really is. And one thing we know about podcasting is...
What's that?
It's full of surprises.
Oh, yeah. So buckle up, listeners.
This ride is far from over.
And on that note...
That is a wrap on this deep dive into the world of podcasting. Keep listening, folks, because there's much more to come.
This episode is brought to you by Podwire's Marketplace, the best platform for finding top podcast service providers and podcast producers. We've selected the best, and we're ready to make your project ideas a reality, no matter the size. We will achieve your business goals together. Find podcast experts who understand your market and will help you grow your business. Learn more right now on the homepage, https://marketplace.podwires.com.